Well, there was the big controversy back in the midst of the Bush administration about national security letters, the FBI using these to spy on people without the Fourth Amendment protections of a court being involved or a judge being involved, even the national security courts. This is something that is ongoing, and some rather startling statistics, and in fact. The Washington Post reporting 60% of the roughly 50,000 security letters issued that year by the FBI targeted Americans. That was in 2006. Google teams up with U.S. spy agencies to monitor you. This is a company called Recorded Future. Rather odd. Monitors tens of thousands of websites, blogs, Twitter accounts, and whatnot. And now on top of this, the Obama administration, this from the Washington Post on Thursday, July 29, the Obama administration is seeking to make it easier for the FBI to compel companies to turn over records of an individual's internet activity without a court order. Paul Rosenzweig is with us. Paul, am I mispronouncing your last name? Whoa. You got to turn down the audio on your computer.
Sorry, turned it off. We're there now.
Yeah, okay. Paul Rosenzweig, he is a visiting fellow with the Center for Legal and Judicial Studies and the Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies over at the Heritage Foundation. Heritage.org is the website. Paul, why should, and now the Obama administration is coming forward and they're asking for even more power to get from our internet service providers who we're talking to in email and what websites we're visiting. Why should we, the people, go along with this?
Well, I think the answer to your question is it's not clear that we should. The question really is what sorts of protections are going to be put in place to prevent abuse. It's long been the case that the identity of who you're talking to, phone numbers you call, and things like that are not protected as strongly as is the content of your communications. So,
right.
For example, the phone number that you dialed to get me here, that's not protected. They can. It's been for about 50 years typical that you can get that quite readily. On the other hand, to be able to listen into this conversation, assuming we were having a private conversation instead of a public one, would require a warrant issued by a judge for the issuance of a wiretap.
Right.
So the cut line here that we need to think about is where does that play out in the Internet? Is the fact that I Google the Thom Hartmann show an address, like a phone number, or does it reveal something about what I'm thinking, i.e. that I like you and that I think you're a good radio host? Or
the opposite, whatever it may be.
Yes.
We're talking with Paul Rosenzweig of the Heritage Foundation, heritage.org. But here's the thing. In many ways, cyberspace has become a virtual reality. I mean, there are locations that people visit on a regular basis that are not unlike 30 years ago or 40 years ago. You or I walking down the street and going into a particular retail store or going into a XXX rated movie shop or going into a gym or going into a movie theater or whatever it may be. And the nature of these, I mean, what we're doing is we're in cyberspace doing what we used to do in physical reality. And in physical reality, if the government wants to plant a GPS on my body and track me or attach one to my car or wants to listen into my telephone conversations, but just at the most general level, even if they want to track me to the point of knowing who I'm talking to at every moment, they have to get a court order. Why shouldn't they for the web?
It's actually not that easy. I mean, yeah, I wish that were the case. It might very well be, but the example you started out with is actually the opposite. They can follow you on the public streets without a warrant. And somebody they don't need a warrant to tail your car if they want to with a GPS or the old-fashioned way with a with two guys in a car behind you that you don't notice.
So
and if they want to list down where you're going into,
the government can attach tracking devices to me without a warrant?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't need a warrant to put a GPS tracker on you. There's been some dispute about how whether or not that's changing now that the GPS actually can see inside the walls of your garage. But it used to be, up until about 5 years ago, it was very clear that the government could put a little radio beacon on you that goes beep, 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 like they do on the James Bond movies, and not have any need for a warrant at all. So in some ways, we're trying to take rules that were designed for a physical space and move them to the cyberspace. And the real difference is not that the rules are different. It's just that it's so much easier in cyberspace to do the tracking.
Well, and frankly, I'm also concerned. I'm assuming that you've read or are familiar with the Wall Street Journal special on Saturday's paper. I think in Saturday's paper about how their reporters visited a whole bunch of different websites and they got not just tracking cookies but like active little flash cookies that can give enormous amounts of personal information about people to anybody who places them. Now, this has nothing to do with the government. This is private industry, but and the Constitution doesn't protect us from private industry. It protects us from government overreach. But it seems to me that there is some crossover, and at a certain level, there should be. The government should be passing laws that protect us from industry the same way that we are protected from government. And it also seems to me that this is one of the areas where you and Heritage and people who call themselves conservatives probably share many of the same concerns that people who call themselves liberals or progressives and draw out of the Jeffersonian Enlightenment era, our philosophy that, government and frankly, in my opinion, private industry should be only allowed into our lives, into our personal lives, and into our world to the extent that we allow it.
Well, for conservatives, it's actually, I think, harder than for liberals. For liberals, it's very easy. You can just say, we're against government no matter what it does, if it's an intrusion. Conservatives I am.
Well, that sounds kind of like a Tea Party routine.
Yeah, I'm more in the nature of trying to find out how to make government effective at doing the things that I think it needs to do, stop terrorists from killing us, while at the same time protecting liberty. And to my mind, that usually means more and better oversight.
Sure.
The first people who should lose their privacy on the web are the government officials who use the web. Right? That's kind of where I come out.
That's very interesting.
Which is to say, I'm actually willing to let them do some work to find out who's visiting terrorist websites, for example.
As long as somebody's looking over their shoulder to make sure.
Because I don't want them checking out that I'm going to the Thom Hartman show on the web.
Right.
If it's misused for political purposes, if it's misused to develop an enemies list, if it's misused to impose taxation.
As it has been.
Yes, as it has been. I mean, nobody can disagree with the history of the existence of abuses in the intelligence.
So the big picture here, we're talking with Paul Rosenzweig of the Heritage Foundation and the Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. The big picture, are you in agreement with the Obama administration's desire to expand the FBI's ability to get this information about pretty much anybody without a court order? It seems to me that is lacking that oversight that you're suggesting is so important.
I don't think that as currently structured it's the right step. I am not so sure that we need court oversight so much as we might need Inspector General oversight, right, or a privacy ombudsman.
But then you've got an agency overseeing itself. I mean, the whole point of the courts is to be the check and balance against the executive power.
That's true. On the other hand, as a heritage conservative, I'm not overwhelmed with the ability of courts to actually formulate judgments about critical national security things either.
Well, I think our courts have been badly corrupted going all the way back to 1803, but that's another conversation for another time. Paul, it's nice to talk to a rational conservative.
Thanks.
Not to put down all your peers. I know there's many of them. My father was one. Paul Rosenzweig at heritage.org. Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.